Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and welcome to part 2 of the Excel File Manager, where we are going to be showing you several new features, including a filtering feature. We also have the ability to sort by single click on any column header, either alphanumerically or numerically. We have the ability to add a new folder simply by clicking New Folder and typing in the new name. So that's going to be a great feature. We also have the ability to show the drives as well as the percentage of them. So it's going to be a great new training. Let's get started. Alrighty, thank you very much for joining me on this part 2. If you have not seen part 1, I will make sure to include a link in the description below. So make sure you watch that first, because that's going to be a really fantastic training as well to get started, because we're going to move right ahead with this one without moving backwards, since we do have so much to cover. Let's go over some of the things that have been added since part 1. We do see a ability to add the drives here, which is a great new feature, as well as the percentage of which they are full, and it'll automatically search all the drives on your computer, as well as the ability to click and drill down into the drive and drill back up as well. So that's kind of a cool feature. We have the ability also to change a file, and both file and folder name, simply by clicking here and changing the name, and test 1 2 3, and it's let's go ahead and do that again. Test 1 2 3, and it's automatically changed in the particular folder. You see here we've got our file manager and change, and if we were to change it back, just click it on here, edit the folder name, and then it's automatically been changed in the actual file itself. And we can do the same thing with let's go ahead and show you that again, but let's go ahead and show you how quick that is. I'm going to reduce so we can go on a split screen, and now we can see it. All right, let's go ahead and take a look. Test 4 5 6. All right, and you'll see it automatically changed right here. And we can do the same thing with file names as well. Let's go ahead and change a file name. And here in our main folder we have let's go ahead and pull this one up. We have the ability to change a folder name. Here's this file right here, and we can change it, and it's right here in the folder. If we remove those zeros, let's go ahead and remove those, and you'll see it automatically changes right there in the file itself. So it's a very, very cool feature. So we have both folder and file renaming. We also have the ability, we have added some options feature. So when you click options, we have the ability to show and hide certain columns simply by selecting the particular column header here, and then adding it again by clicking it again. So that's a great new feature. We have additional features that are coming soon in the next coming weeks, which is going to be a default sort by, as well as the delete confirmation ability. So when you delete a folder or a file, you can choose whether you want to see a confirmation or not, and the ability to preview particular, simply by when we click on them, we'll be able to preview whether it's a picture, Word document, PDF, Excel, text, video, or audio. Hopefully I can get all of that in the coming weeks, so I'm looking forward to bringing that to you as well. And we also have, like I mentioned earlier, the ability to add a new folder. Let's go ahead and take a look at how quickly that does work. And we'll go ahead and shrink it down again and go into our traditional file manager here, where we have just 3 folders. But if we were to, let's say, click on here, open it up, we see we have 3 folders. But if we click on a new folder, just clicking on it, and it'll automatically highlight, and you see it's all we have to do is change folder, and you see automatically it changes right here in the file manager. So it's super quick, super convenient, and it works just as you would expect in a particular file manager, but we've added that feature here. And we can go ahead and delete these. We're not going to need those anymore. And all of a sudden, if we refresh our folder here, they're gone as well. And let's see what else we've added so much. So we've had the ability to the options panel we've covered. We have the ability to sort just by clicking, and you'll notice that when we sort through name, it's either A to Z or Z to A, and the same thing with type, but when we do size, it's either 9 through 1 or 1 through 9. So we've used a different Font Awesome icon when we have whether it's number fields and whether we have text fields, so that's kind of helpful. And we also have the ability to sort not only by name or text, but by date or number as well, using less than or greater than. So for example, if we were to filter out by under a specific date, we could do 112017, and all of the dates files would show up that are created less than that. Or if we did something like greater than, then it would also filter out just by, and it would pull up only that file that was created after the date we put in. So that's a really, really helpful filter feature as well, and we can use that through up to all 5 of our field types. And we also have, like I said earlier, the drives feature, which is really helpful. And let's go ahead and go into that. We have additional icons. But before I get into that, I wanted to go over something I kind of missed last time, which was if you don't have the Font Awesome on your computer and how to get that onto your computer. Because this application uses it extensively, you want to go to the Font Awesome website. I've included the link right here under the Font Awesome. And once you are in the site here, you just click on the download the free here, right here, and unzip it. And once it's unzipped, you'll want to put it in your particular fonts folder in your computer. So it's unzipped, probably into the C drive and maybe Windows if you're on a PC, and into the fonts folder, and place it right into this folder here. And you'll see I have mine right here, Font Awesome Regular, and that's where I've put it. Once it's there, it'll automatically be enabled into your Excel file, and all Windows applications it'll be available. Okay, so I thought that would be helpful. And let's go ahead and go over, while we're in this, some of the additional fonts that we've added, as well as the named ranges that we have named them in this particular file. We have the drive icon, and I've named that drive icon, and that's going to be used for the drives when we display the drives, as well as we have my computer, which we use, and the sorting icons, whether it's from alpha, we used alpha, from A to Z or Z to A, and then numerical 1 to 9 and 9 to 1. Each one of them has their own name. Back into the file manager here, we have our drives, and we've also been able to show you the percentage in which they are full. And that is going to be really helpful when we list all the drives, and we can do that just by clicking the button. Also, we can click on the drive and it'll open up the contents of the drive. We can go up from there to show the drives again. This was not in the prior version, so we have that on part 2 as well. And let's go ahead and see how we've done that, as far as we've used basic conditional formatting here with the bar type under Home, and then conditional formatting and manage rules. Here we've had a data bar, and it's going to cover all of column E throughout that. So in case we have more drives, it'll cover that. And this is a basic format cell based on their values, and we've just chosen automatic for the minimum maximum because it understands when you use a percentile to go from 0 to 100. And we've chosen a color and a gradient fill. So it's relatively basic, and we'll go over how we got that data in there using VBA. We've also listed the drive name as the drive letter here as well. Also on conditional formatting, and you'll notice that we have additional features where we've color coded the folders differently. You notice there's folders that are lighter. Those folders that are light are based on the fact that they have no specific subfolder. So as per request that we had in our group the other day, and I really take requests seriously, I try to incorporate those into the training. So here we have folders that do not have subfolders are lighter, and then ones that do are a little bit darker, and we've done that through conditional formatting. I'll show you that very shortly. All right, and through VBA, what I've done is I've run a little test to see if folders have a subfolder or not, and then I've put true or false in column A. If it's true, if they do have subfolder, it's true. And if they do not have any subfolders, I've marked this as false. We'll go through the code shortly, but let's take a look at the conditional formatting. As you see, this is a lighter folder, it's false, and this is a true. Let's go ahead and take a look at the conditional formatting and how we did that. You may want to change colors, and I'll show you how to do that as well. Under Manage Rules, we'll see we have two specific rules with color folders. One's a little bit lighter and one's darker, both orange. So under the Edit rule, if we take a look, there's basically two conditions that must exist for the lighter color folder. For the lighter color folder, there's two conditions. One is that D9, or D9 within is the first in the range, right, must be a closed folder. And the other condition is A9 must be false. And first of all, the important thing is we have to start with 9, okay? The reason we start with 9 is because under the applies to also start with 9. That is key. If this starts with 9, this way our conditional formatting goes throughout the entire range. That means regardless of whatever row our folder shows up in, it's gonna hold true. So that is why you'll see there's no $ before 9 here and no $ before 9 there. However, there is a $ before A, and that's because we're using an absolute column in A, but we are not using one in D. And why is that? And that is because folders can show up in column D, they can show up in column E, F, they can show up, subfolders can show up in any of these columns, right? So we have to make sure that D is not absolute, that it can cover any of those columns. Whereas in A, our true or false is always going to be in column A, always. So that's not going to change. So therefore, column A is absolute, and that is why we have the differentiation. So whether it's absolute containing a $ is very, very critical here when we're using conditional formatting, and it's important when not to have it and when to have it. So I've explained both of those issues there. Now let's go ahead and look into the darker folder, and we have additional. We use this darker folder for both open folders, right, and for both folders that are closed that contain subfolders. So this is a little bit more of a tricky, right? So we've used this under two conditions. One condition, if it's an open folder. If there's an open folder, color this color, okay? But if it's a closed folder, we need two conditions to be true. We need it to, one, be the closed folder, this is the named range, and the other thing, A9 or that entire column, whatever the column is, must be true. So whatever the row in column A is, whatever the row we're focusing on, must be true. So these two conditions, that's why it's an and. These two conditions must be true in order for us to color this conditional formatting this darker yellow. So closed folder and true, meaning that it has subfolders. True means it has subfolders. Therefore, we would color that closed folder darker. And that is how we have covered this. I've also included a simple conditional formatting where we have, if there's a drive icon, named range here is blue, right? Here's the blue, right? Goes right here. And then we've colored that blue. So wherever a drive icon, it's going to automatically color that blue as well. So that's it for the conditional formatting. It's very, very simple. I have also made a slight change to a formula here. Originally, if our file name contained a period, we may not get the right icon here. So now I've made a change here. Wow, look at that. Where I've used a different formula. And this basically all this formula does is it's going to look for multiple periods, and it's going to find only the last period, right? Before in file number 1, if the file name contained a period, it was not going to show this icon. It would go back to the default icon. But we've gone ahead and fixed that, or I have gone ahead and fixed that. So that issue doesn't come up anymore. That has been done. We also have, let's see what other features. We do have a lot of other features, and we've also changed from kilobytes to megabytes. This is more of a preferential, so you may want to change it. I've changed the formatting to show megabytes instead of kilobytes so that we can show less of the numbers here. It seemed to fit a little bit better, and we did that with a custom format as you can see here under the custom formats, we've changed that here, and I've added additional commas here which take away the additional zeros and then add megabyte to it. So you can play with this and see which one you like the best, or you can leave it the way I have it. Either way, you can change it to kilobytes. So this is helpful to show a little bit smaller numbers so we can keep that column a little bit smaller, which was helpful. So I've changed that there. So that is it for the features that we've added. Now let's go ahead and go under the hood and see how we did all of this so that you can do this for yourself and learn how to work with the file system object, which is really an amazing object. So we're going to go into the VBA now and go through item by item. Into the Developers tab we go. You can click Visual Basic or Alt F11 if you don't have it. File, Properties, and under Options you can show the Developers tab. With the Customize ribbon, just select the Developers tab here, and that will show you this tab. Visual Basic we go. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we have here. We've added some additional on-sheet macros here, and we've done that for selection change and named range. And let's go ahead and go through. Let's start with sort. Okay, we've got sort, and we have here on selection change here, we have file sort here. So basically what we're going to do is if a user selects any cell from S6 through W6, then run this macro. That's all the on sheet we're doing. So that means if we select from S6 to W6, run a macro, and that macro is the sort. And let's go into that sort and see how we did that. Back into VBA we go. I've created a module called sorting macros, and it's just really just one macro that we do all of the work in. And I'll go ahead and go over this with you. Well, we've defined three particular variables as long. We need to know what the current column is that we've selected. The column is important. We need to know what the last row of the data is, because we need to sort it, so we need to pull the last row. And we need to know what the header column is, so we've defined that. Now, we do a lot of work with the table, and remember, when we make a change, like sometimes we make a change and we want to change the name, right? So when we click here and we make a change, we want the file to change. But when we're sorting, we don't want any changes to the file. So what we've done is we've set an item here, B2, to load, right? So basically what we're saying is when we do something like sorting, or when we do something like filtering, or even when we list all the files, mark this as true. And when it's true, I don't want any change. Like for example, if we change this to 1660, it's going to change that file name. So I need to differentiate between this type of change or the type of change when we're sorting, right? Because those are both changes, right, to the cell. But on one change, we actually want to make a file change, right, so that this sticks, right, so that it changes the file. And another type of change, and on this type of change, we don't want any change. So this is why we use this false. So that means, when we set this to true, no other changes are going to be made. And I'll go over that in a little bit of detail with you. We're going to stop the calculations, and if you remember correctly, this is covered in this macro here, and all that does is it disables the calculation and it disables the screen updating. And before the macro closes, we're going to reset the calculation, which enables the calculation to automatic and enables the screen updating. So you'll see that this is really common through the coding, because I want the code to run much faster, and so we use that almost in every type of sorting or filtering or loading type of macro. We're going to be using that. It's very common. So that is why you'll see things like stop calculation, and then you'll see end, and then it will end with reset calculation. That is the reason for that. And so we set B2 to true, so that means nothing else goes on. And before we leave this macro, we will set it back to false. But while we're working, we don't want anything to happen. It just helps prevent other things to happen. And the reason is, like for example, when we run, let's say when we run okay, a change folder name, right? We're going to check when it says when there's a change to D9, we have to, it's also another check to make sure B2 is false, right? So we're running that check, and then if it's not false, if it's true, then we're not going to do anything in here. So that is the reason we set things. So it's basically like a check. It's like, are you going to be filtering? Are you changing a file? It helps us differentiate the types of changes that we're doing. So we set the active header to the cell value. I need to know what value that is. And the reason is I need to know, first of all, I need to know if there's a sort. For example, if I click on here on name, the current sort is A to Z. And I need to know if that current sort is A to Z, then I should sort it Z to A, right? So if we click on here, it sorts Z to A. But if we click on type, now type, there is no sort. I want to automatically go to A to Z. And I automatically go to A to Z if there's no sort. However, if there is a current sort, then I want to do the opposite. So if there's a current sort of A to Z, I want to do Z to A. If there's a current sort of Z to A, I want to do A to Z. So it's important we get what is in here, right? I need to know this label. I need to know what the current sort is on it. So we've done that through our code here. So we're going to get the active cell value. We need to determine if the active header value is if it's sorting, and if it's sorted, what is. We also need to determine the last row. I need to know what the last row is. So we need to pull the last row of the file. In this case, it's 25. So we need that for sorting because we need to know what is the last row that we're going to be sorting. We're going to clear out if there's any previous sorts. We need to clear those out. And here is the point where I determine if there's a current sort on the column and if that sort is either ascending or descending. Okay, so we need to know, is there a current sort on this column, and if so, is it ascending or descending? That's what I need to know. So that's what the next two lines of code are going to help me. And we're going to use the inString function. And basically it's going to say is it's looking for this string. Remember, this is a character. Remember, we've defined this, sort alpha AZ. So it's looking for this right here, AZ. Remember, sort alpha AZ. So it's going to say, is this character found? And if so, then we know the current is A to Z. So we're looking for those characters. So it says, if in the current header, do you find A to Z, right? If not, does not equal 0, right? That means if it's found, if it is found, or, right, or here. And here's, let's go make this a little bigger. Okay. Or if it's sorting by number 1 through 9. So basically either one of these, 1 through 9 would be the same. Then it would be descending. Okay, so if either one of these characters are found, sort 1 through 9 or A through Z, then set the sort type as descending because currently, right, if A to Z is found, that means it's ascending. So we need to set it for descending, right? It's going to be descending. If Z to A is found, then that means it's ascending, and we need to set it basically for the opposite. So it helps us determine what the current sort is and what to set it as, because we want it opposite. So here in the remarks it says check if the active column is set for ascending, and if so, set the type to descending. And the same thing here. If the current active column is set for descending, then set it for ascending. So this helps us determine. So we set this sort type, right? We set the sort type either for descending or ascending. And here we go. Now we're going to run through all the column headers because what I want to do is I want to clear, right? So for example, if our, oh, by the way, let's go ahead and do equals column. Okay, so you can see where we're going to get these column numbers from. Okay, so this is column 19, right? And if we extend this, it's going to go from column 19 to column 23. That is the reason we've used those numbers, column number 19 through 23. So we're going to go from those 5 columns. For header column equals 19 to 23, we're going to run a loop. And the idea is I want to remove any, so for example, if we want to sort by name, right, I need to remove this character right here. I need to remove this character right here. And I need to remove the space, right? The space I guess could stay either way, but I'm removing it. I'm removing that and the space between it. So I want to remove those things. I want to remove it from all of them. right? Because we're going to clear the sort. We don't know that. We don't know. So we're going to clear the character, right? So if the sort is here, we need to clear the character from here and add it here. So our first loop is going to do just that. It's going to clear the header. And what it's going to do is there's going to be 4 different replace statements. And it's going to say, our 4 different replace statements is basically going to say, if you find this icon, this icon, this icon, or this icon, if you find any of those characters, remove them. So that's what it's going to do. That's what our replace statement is going to do. So it says it starts with the original value, which is the row 6, and our header column. Whatever the value is, right? Header column is going to move from 19 to 23, but it's going to stay on row 6 because that's where our header is located. And it's going to say, what are we looking for? Sorry about that. What are we looking for? Let's go ahead and extend that, make it a little bit bigger. We're looking for a space, and we're looking for alpha AZ. So we're looking for these 2 items together. If it's found, replace it with nothing. And the next line, space Z to A. If it's found, right? If that's found, replace it with nothing. And then the same thing 2 more times, 1 through 9, 9 through 1. If either of those are found, replace it. So that line of code simply removes the icons from all the cells. So it removes it. So now we have just pure names with no sorting icon, because we want that to refresh it. So we've done that with that replace line, and we've gone through the loop. So we've done that for each of the headers from 19 to 23. Now we've already set the sort the sort type. It's either descending or ascending, and we're going to say, okay, if the sort type is descending, then do the following: sort the fields, right? And the sort, we're starting at row 9, and the current active cell column, right? The current active, that's the column that we're going to be sorting, right? We need to know what we're sorting. And then we're going to sort on the values, and we're going to sort descending, right? We're sorting descending because the sort type is ascending and the sort is normal. And we're going to also do if the active cell column is less than 20. Now we have to know what, because we're using different icons, it's a little bit tricky. In these 2 columns, right? In these 2 columns, we're going to use A to Z. But in these 3 columns, we're going to use 1 through 9, 9 to 1, right? So this column right here, equals column, I shouldn't have erased it. This column is 21. So that means if the column is less than 21, use A to Z, Z to A. If it's not, use 1 through 9, 9 through 1 icons. So we're using 2 different icons in the sort. So we need to differentiate between those, and we've used the column. We know our first 2 columns, 19 and 20, use A to Z, Z to A. But our second ones use something, our second, third, and third, fourth, and fifth columns use 1 through 9. So I've differentiated that in this line of code right here. If the active cell column is less than 21, then the active cell value equals whatever the current value is, means the header name plus a space plus sort the icon Z to A, right? Because we're descending Z to A. Otherwise, right? Otherwise, then that means if the column is not less than 21, that means it's 21 or greater. In that case, we're going to use the 1 through 9, the 9 through 1. So in that case, else, right? Active cell value equals the active cell value, the current name, plus sort 9 through 1, descending. So we're going to use this icon. I know it's a little bit confusing, but you will have this workbook. You can download it. You can go through it line by line. I've tried to use explaining exactly what we're doing in the comments, so that should be helpful. So that's if the sort type was descending. But what if it's ascending? What if it's ascending? In that case, we just need to do basically the opposite. We're going to sort on ascending here, and we're going to do, if it's less than 21, we're going to use the icon A to Z, or we're going to use the icon 1 to 9. Right? We're going to add a space, and we're going to use the icon. So that is it. And since the entire, I've used the entire cell, I've used that as, set that for Font Awesome. Text works okay too, so I've set the entire header row for Font Awesome, which works just great. So there's no problem with that as well. Okay, so now we have our headers set. And so now we just need to sort. Now all we need to do is sort. So now with the sort, we can set the range. We know it starts on Q9. and then we goes to X as our last column, and then our last row, which was defined. So we run that sort. Right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to clear the selected row on the sort B1. And just in case we've selected a row, we highlight the row that we've selected and then B1. And basically what I say is when we sort it, I don't want to clear that row, right, unless it's checked. Let's say it's not checked. And then so that way no line gets highlighted. That's kind of a small issue. And then remember, we're going to set the file load to false. B2 goes back to false so that we can get ready in case we need to make a file change. And then I just selected A1 just to select something different, a different cell, so that the entire table is not selected. That's it. And then we reset the calculation. So that is how we do the sort. And you will love this feature because it's not very difficult to code. And it's super beautiful, super intuitive, and very, very simple. And so I think you'll love that. Next up, let's go over the filtering. Since we've covered sort, now we're going to cover filtering. And here we have different filters. I put these default names in here, and we use that. And you'll notice that when we AB, let's go ahead, A, B. And then when we filter, you'll notice that the font is no longer gray and it's no longer italicized. And I have used a conditional formatting for that, and we'll go over that. Once we clear the filters and we put back in the default text, it becomes italicized and it becomes gray. Now we can use a conditional formatting with that. As long as we find a common denominator among all of these fields, we can set that conditional formatting based on those common denominator. And if you look closely, each one of these fields have something in common, and they all include a colon, right? They all include a colon. We can use that as the common denominator in order to set that conditional formatting. So once we select a cell, we'll go into Home, Conditional Formatting, and Manage Rules, and we'll take a look at that conditional formatting. And here it's quite simple. If the specific text contains that colon, then set the format of gray and italicized. You can set the color whatever you like. You can set it for light blue. All right, let's say we set it for light blue. Click OK and OK, and then apply that, and then it changes to light blue if you like that. It's a little bit nicer. So it gives us we have the ability to control it, and all we need to do is find a common denominator. It is not likely that you will filter by a colon. I guess if you, a colon. I guess if you filtered by a colon, it would, but it's not likely you'll filter that. So we've done that. Now, how do I get these names back in here? Well, one way would be to add them back in. But what I've done here is I've just basically, through the code, is I've set the default names right here, and then I've copied in the values, not the formatting, just the values from this range back into here. And let's go ahead and go over the filtering macros now back into the VBA. Let's go on the sheet, the file manager sheet, the on sheet. And if we make a change, okay, so that's range is going to be S7 through W7. If we make a change to anything, that's our range for making changes. S7 through W7 is our range. So if we make a change on that, on error, resume next, this helps us to prevent bugs when it's cleared out. Sometimes we do have bugs, so that helps us. Now we're going to check if we make a change, and we're going to check for that colon. If the change that we make doesn't include a colon, then we can run the filter. But if we make a change, for example, when we copy back in the values, we're making a change, but those values all contain a colon. So in this case, it won't run. So for example, when we through VBA, when we take these values, we take all these values, and we copy them back into here, I don't want any filter code to run. I don't want the filter to run but each one of those contain a colon. Again, we're going to use that same common character to differentiate between when we're running a filter and when we're not running a filter. So it's going to basically say if the target value contains a colon, right? As long as that equals to 0, it means it's not found. As long as that colon is not found, then we can run the macro filter. And so let's go into that filter, into the module filter macros. And we have just two macros. One is going to be clearing the filters, and the other is going to be filtering by those macros. by the change. And again, we've stopped the calculations and stopped the screen updating with this macro here. We're setting the sheet 1. And the first thing I want to do is I want to reload the folder in case we have set some particular in case we have some filter already. I want to make sure that we've reset the folder, and so that all of the files, so we filter by them all. So that means if we do multiple filter, I want to be able to do multiple filters, but I know that I need to run through the entire ones again. So if we change this to PNG, I want to make sure that we're considering all. So we need to reload the folder so that all of them appear, and then we can use these. So to do that, we'll run the reload folder macro, and that basically loads all the files back in the way they were in case there's. And we're going to set again B2 to true because we're making changes in the cells, and I want to make sure that we only do that and not do anything else. We need to set the last row so that we know everything to filter by. This last row sets up, and then what we want to do is we want to clear, and this is our previous conditional formatting results, and that's all the way over here. I showed you this last time. So what we're going to do is here, right? So basically what I want to do is if there's any, notice how the results come here, but I want to clear any results because I want to run a new filter, so we want to clear the results. So we've just gone ahead and cleared the results from these fields. It would be CA to CH and then all the way down as far as you want to go. That's what we've done here, CA3 to CA99, clear those contents. And now what we're going to do is we're going to run some code for each of the headers. So whether it's S, T, U, or V, right? Each of those headers, I want to run a particular code there to make sure that we, one, that it does not include a colon, right? Because I want to make sure, it shouldn't, but I want to make double sure. And if we're going to say if the S1 is empty. So if either of these things happen, if it contains a colon, or if it's empty, right? If either of those things, then I want to make sure that the corresponding, not the results, but the criteria is cleared out. So here's the criteria that we're going to run: name, type. You see how we've got those filtered? So for example, when we run that, if the size contains a colon, right, which it does, or if it's clear, right, or if it's empty, then in that case I want to make sure this is empty too. So in those two instances I want to make sure this is empty, so if it contains a colon. So that's all we've done for that line of code for the same for each of them. So the same for each of those cells. And so we've done that through S, T, U, and V. I believe we need to do one more here. Date modified, date type, name type. Let's take a look. So we've done that for each of them here. If they contain a colon, cleared out. But if they're not, if it doesn't contain those, then take whatever is in S7, whatever the user has entered, and put that in BC3, BD3, or BDE3. So whatever the user has put, but in fact, I want to surround it. If it's text, I want to surround it by the stars, because that means any file that starts or that has 166 in it, any file that has PNG in it. Okay, so we're not, it's a non-exact match, and we add those little stars right here before, and right here after. So for each of those, we have added those files. So for the name, the type, the date created, and the date. So for all of those fields, right, we have done that for as well. I guess I could do, I'll make sure to add size in here as well. When you get it, it'll have size as well. So don't worry about that. We'll cover that. So that's what we've done there. And then what we've done here is we've run our advanced filter. And our advanced filter is basically going to do this. It's going to take all of the files, right? And it has to include a header, right? It has to include the header. Here's the trick. So if we know our advanced include, but the header's all the way up here, right? And there's no header here. So how do we include the header? Well, we've done that through a hidden, right here, number 8. I've included the headers here because we need to include that header. That header is critical because it tells us where to start, right? So we've used a hidden row. So I've got the headers right here. So that's where we're going to start 8. But we don't need to see that, right? So we've put the headers in 8, and then we've hidden it. So that gives us a little trick. So we know that the headers must match these headers and must match these headers. So all those match when we run our advanced filter. So our advanced filter starts in Q8. 8 is that hidden row that includes the headers. X is our last column, last row is the last row. We're going to run that advanced filter. We're going to copy it over, and we're going to copy it over to our criteria range, which is what I just showed you, BA2 through BH2, right here. BA2, let's go ahead and pull that over. BA2 through BH2. So that's our criteria here. In this case, 166 PNG is our criteria. And our results here are going to be CA2 through CH2. All of the results are going to list down here. So the rest of our advanced filter, CA2 through CH2. And then we want unique values. And then what I want to do then is I want to say, okay, now I need to find out the last row of our filter, and I need to take all the details from the first row to the last row, and I need to copy the values, and I need to copy them right here, and I need to put them right here. We don't need the icon because that's a formula, right? So we really just need name through date modified, name through date modified. And so all we're going to do is really copy CC through CH and the last row. So we get our last row, and then we clear out any data that's in our range. We need to clear out any of the data that's here. We need to clear this out right here. So we'll go ahead and clear that out. Not R, R's formula, so we need to clear out only Q, and then we need to clear out S through W, or S through X, I should say. So Q, right? And then S through X. Remember, leaving R empty. We don't want to clear out R. R is a formula, so that's no problem. Now we want to show that clear filter button shapes. We want the user to be able to clear that filter, and this button here has been assigned the clear filter button name, and we want that to be displayed and only displayed when there's a filter active. Once it's cleared, this will disappear. So we want to show it here with this row. Now we also want to say, hey, if the last filter row is less than 3, that means there's no data. So if our last filter row, if the last row, let's say the last row is 2, that means there is no data. So we want to skip copying over anything. So if the last filter is less, then just reset the calculator and exit sub. Just leave it. There's nothing to copy, so we don't need to go to these lines. However, if there is data, like in this case, we need to go ahead and basically say the value of last filter plus 6 equals a value. So this is like copy and paste, but it's quicker and it's easier. And what I'm doing here, let's go ahead and take a look at this. This row, the first row of data starts on row 3. In here, the first row of data starts on row 9. The difference is 6, right? So we need to add 6. So that means if the last row of data here is 4, the last row of data is going to be 10, right? So we need to add 6. Add 6. So that's just what we've done in the code. S9 plus the last filter row plus 6 equals basically the last 4 digits. So that just pulls the data from S to X, and it pulls the data right into our main area. And the last thing we're going to do is set the file load to false. And that is how we run our filters. And that's a great, great, great feature. So that's how we run it. And just to clear the filter, we click clear filter, and then it returns the file back to all of the original contents. And we do that through this just few lines of code. Once again, we stop the calculations. We are going to reset the default search. Here is where we pull the values from, we pull back those header values. Remember those header values that contain colons? All we're going to do is pull them from AM7 to AQ7 and pull them right in here. I'll show you that. AM7, AQ7, all we're taking those values and we're putting them right here. That's what that line of code does. And then what we're going to do is we're going to clear any of the previous search criteria and search results just so that it gets it ready for the next time. And then we're going to hide that clear button. We don't need the clear filter button if there's no filter active, so we hide the button. That is all we do. We reload the folder and then we reset the calculations. That is all we do to run the clear filter. Filter is an extremely powerful feature, and that is how we do it. All right, another cool feature in this version is the ability to show the drives. This was previously in part 1 not available, but I have gone ahead and added it in where it shows it goes through all of the drives you have. It lists the percentages in which they fall along with the name and drive number and the icon. And that will happen when you click My Computer, or of course when you're moving up in the level, it will also show when you get to that drive level as well. And if you try to go again, it'll just give you a note saying you are at the drive level. Let's go ahead and show you how we did that as well. Also, it shows the icon My Computer as well, and it shows a different icon when you're in a folder here. So I thought that would be helpful. Let's go ahead and go into the code so we see how we did that back into VBA. Under the module drives macro, we have some drives, and there's not a lot of code. Basically, all we're going to do is we're going to have Excel look in the computer, look into the file system object, and list all of the drives, and just list the percentage that it's full, as well as the drive name and letter. And we can do that by creating, just as we do with almost the other macros in this particular training, is create a scripting file system objects which lets Excel know that the object FSO will refer to this scripting object. Stopping calculations and setting the folder load to true. And then what we want to do is we want to make sure we clear out any particular folders and any data that has to do with folders. So I want to make sure that we've cleared out all this information here and anything here. We're going to clear those values and go all the way to column O. Okay, P is used for a spacer, right? P is used for, the reason we use P for spacer is because when we have something like this, I don't want it to extend, right? So if there's nothing here, right, if there's nothing here and I backspace, it's going to extend over. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that we include a space here. So the space, this column is used for the space. So when I put a space in here, the text doesn't bleed over. So that's why we only use to column O. And back into, so we're gonna clear out all of that, anything we're gonna clear out in those columns there. So that is what this line of code, clear existing files and folders. We're doing that there. And then next, what I want to do is I want to set the row number. Our first row number is 9 because we're going to list the drives. We're going to start at row number 9. And then we're going to define the drives here, drives. And so we're going to say the object drive. Here we've defined it as an object. The object drive is basically every drive in your file system. So for each drive in the file system drives, we need to do a few things. We're going to set the name, the object name, right? Set the name to whatever the drive is here. So when we get the drive name and put it here from the object drive, so basically we need to get that drive name. And then we'll go to the next drive. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go through all of those. And then what we're going to do with each of those is we need to get some information from each of those. So while it goes through, let's go ahead and make sure that's clear. Tab that out so that we see our loop clearly. In column number B, I want to put the path, right? I want to put that path right here. I want to show C, D. I don't put the path. That's going to be helpful moving forward. And then in D, I want to put the drive icon. Remember, that's defined in sheet 2, drive icon. In column number E, what I want to do is I want to put a few things. I want to put the percentage. I want to put the percentage of full. And we can do that basically by determining the total size. So the object drive total size, this gives us our size. Minus the free space, this gives us our free space. So if we divide total size minus the free space, we then get our used space. We know how much was used. So our used space divided by the total size, and it's going to put it in a percent format. We're formatting all of this in a percent. That is how we get the percent. That is how we get 50%, 88, 86. That is how we do that. And we put that in column number E. Then what we do is we merge, because if I don't merge it with H, right? If I don't merge, let's go here. If I don't merge, let's see, let's go ahead and unmerge that. Okay. this is what it's going to show. If we don't, normally we only have, we've set our columns to, 2.29 width, and that's just not enough to show what I want to show. So I want to merge it all the way to H. So when we merge it, and in this case probably not centered it, when we merge it, it's going to show the full, because I want to show the percentage, and I want to show how full it is in a conditional formatting. So we need to merge it with H. So that's an important feature. So we've done that right here. Between E and the row number and H and the row number, we merge it. So we're going to do that. And then what we do is I want to show in I, right? In I want to show both the drive name, right, and the drive letter, and I want to surround that drive letter by parentheses, and then a colon, and then a parentheses. So in column I want to show, right? I want to show, actually it's here it is in column A. I want to show the name, right? The name of the drive, plus the parentheses, plus the letter, plus the colon, plus the end parentheses. So I want to show all of those things, and we can do that with just this line of code. The volume name, that's going to give us Windows or whatever the volume name is, plus the parentheses, plus the drive letter, plus colon, plus the end parentheses. So that's how we do it. We're going to set B5 and H5 to my computer. We're going to set both of those so we know B5 and H5, right, to my computer. So H5, so it lists, so we know what we're on. And then we're going to set the icon, of course, G5, right, equals the my computer icon. That's the icon that we use. And then, so we're going to do that through each loop. Actually, let's pull this out of the loop. That doesn't belong there. So we don't need to do that for each G5. We don't need to do that for each of the row, right? We can pull that right out of the loop. And right here. Okay. So that's not, and this too as well, we can pull that out of our loop. We don't need that as well in the loop because those are just one instances, but everything above is within our loop. Okay, so this we just need one instance, this we just need one instance of that. And so we do this for each of the drives. So let's go through all the drives on the computer and do just that. So that when we run the code, my computer, it's going to list all of the drives. So let's go ahead and clear that, delete it. And we don't need that, and mismatch, there we go. And so that is how we do that. Now, however, you notice that we have merged those cells, and yet when we list the folders, they're not merged. So we have to do a few things, right? We need to unmerge that. So I made a few changes. We need to make sure that when we're showing folders, these are not merged. And so we've done that through the code, and I've made a little additions under our folder macros here, right? I've added some additional code under this. This is an original, here we go. These 3 lines here we've added, okay? What we're going to do is we're going to, I'm going to go over that with you just now. Let's see, unmerge, here we go. E9 through H99, we're going to unmerge all the cells. Now, look at this. What is this here? Let me show you let me comment it out, and then I'll show you what it looks like without it, and then I'll explain why we added it in. Okay, so we're going to comment it out. I'm going to disable it, and now let's go back to my drives, and then we're going to go back into the home folder again, and you're going to see, look, you see how these black, because we've unmerged them, because we've unmerged those cells. Let's have a look, right? Let's just go look at the conditional formatting. Conditional formatting, manage rules. Look how it kind of got messed up. You see that? Remember, it should look something like this. It shouldn't be all like this. But because we've merged and unmerged, we've kind of messed up our formats. And now this is a great opportunity for me to show you. Now it's like, now I may be able to fix all these formatting through VBA. I may, but it would be more difficult coding. But here's what I've done. Here's what I've done. What I've done is I created a clone of the formatting. Okay, a clone. And if you look right here, it's kind of hidden. You see this right here, this range right here? This is called a backup folder format. And what I've done is all I've done is copied. Let's go back into here. All I did is I took this whole, when it was working right, when the formats were all perfect, right? I took this and I went all the way down to 1000, all the way down, right, which is about what, and I copied it, right? I copied it, right click, copy, and then I moved over here and I right click right here. We'll go up to actually, let's go up to the top. There we go. To 9, right? To FD9 and a right click, and I paste special and paste those formats, right? And I pasted the formats in here. And the reason I did is because I want a good version of these formats, and I want to put them right here. They're not in the right cells, but they're all correct. And if you look here, let's go ahead and look at the conditional formatting. Now the columns are not correct, and that's okay, right? But the conditional formatting is correct, right? The conditional formatting is all correct, but it applies to the wrong columns. But if we were to copy, let's go ahead, I'm going to do that now. Let's go ahead and copy that manually. Okay, and then let's go ahead and shift down, right click. I don't want to do that many. No. Let's start at FP 1000. Okay, FP 1000. Okay, we'll start there, and then we'll move all the way up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this format because they're all set. Control C. We're going to go back in here, right click the first one. Let's stop the code because it's going to pause the code. Okay, because I don't want it to do right click. Let's copy it once more. FP 1000. Okay, FP. I want all because that's the only one I want to copy. And then we're going to move up, right up here, and go there. And we're going to copy that. Now that we've paused the code, nothing else will happen while we're copying it. And just as we've done, right click, paste special. Okay. And then we're going to paste the formats. I want you to see paste formats. Okay, now it's correct. Okay, now we're going to reset the code. Let's go ahead and reset the code. Go down and open up our folder structure. And you see that all the formats are now correct. So, because we have a range that is exactly right for all we need to do through code is copy. All I need to do through VBA is take this range here, copy the formats back, and it'll make the formats correct again. It's really, really simple. So again, here, let's go ahead and uncomment those out. So range FD9 through FP1000, copy. Range D9, paste the formats, and then cut the application. So that corrects that corrects the issue because we're changing formats, right? That corrects it. And that's how we've been able to fix it, so that we can easily go from this, right, to back to this without having any formatting issues. Okay? That's why the folders all get formatted just right. So I think that's super helpful. So I wanted to show it to you. And when you have formatting issues like that, you can use this same technique. So it's a really great technique, and I've used it a lot, especially with things like drag and drop or something where clients or users can tend to mess up formats. You can just copy them right back from an unused range. So it's a really, really helpful trick. So I wanted to show that to you. All right, next up on our list, let's go ahead and take a look at the options panel here. There's not much to it right now. All we're doing is basically hiding rows Z through AA when we click hide options, and we're showing column Z through A when we click hide options. And then once again, all we're doing is hiding columns and showing columns based on the selection of whatever selection we've done. Here there's no macros, no functionality here yet. It's just a placeholder for future work that we're going to do in future part 3 and part 4, or however many parts, depending upon your suggestions, as I always consider your suggestions seriously. So let's go ahead and go into the options macro and see how we did that. It's not too difficult. On the sheet, we do have some on-sheet macros. If you'll go ahead and look on selection change here, right? On selection change of right here into Z11 through Z15. Z11 is that we're going to show or hide column headers, Z11 through Z15. And that would be right here, Z11 through Z15. So we've done that here. If we select anything, then we want to run the macro. And that macro is here under options. And we have show or hide columns here. And now we know, right? Let's take a look at this. If we know this is row 11, right? We know this is row 11, and we know type column is 20. Remember, this is column 21, this is column 20. So if this is column 11, but we need to show or hide column 20, we just need to add 9, right? So if size is column 12 and the row 12, and it's also the same as column 21, we need to add 9. So that's all we need to do. So here we say active cell. First, we're going to, if the active cell is a check, means if it's a current check, then we need to change it to uncheck, and we need to hide the column. It means it's currently visible because it has a check icon. So we need to make it invisible and change the icon. So we put in the uncheck icon, and we make the column hidden. So we hide it. Otherwise, show the column. By changing it to a check icon, and then the active cell row plus 9. That's a very cool trick on how we go from row to column, and then we take that hidden. So that is all that we need to do, and then we just select another cell. That is it for that. We have macros that show the options and macros that hide the options, and we've assigned those macros to those buttons that I've shown you. And all this does is simply on show, it unhides column Z through AA, and then it shows the hide button and it hides the show button. Just the opposite for the hide options. We are hiding these columns. We are hiding the hide options button. We are showing the show option button. So that is how we do the show option buttons. So that's a really helpful trick. Let's see what else we have. Name change. Let's go ahead and go into the folder name change. That is a very cool trick. And once again, let me show you how that's done. And again, what we do here, let's go ahead and pull up that folder there, and so I can show you exactly how we have done it through that. And we'll go into the documents folder, and I want you to see so we can mimic and match what we're doing here. And once again, the idea is when I change the name of a folder in Excel, I want that changed also in my file manager. So if let's go ahead and click on here. If I have images here and I want to change that, and here you see images here, and all we need to do is just go ahead and change this name, and then it'll automatically change in the corresponding folder as well. And here we go, you see that change. Now, how did we do that? Let's go ahead and go into the VBA code on sheet macros here into the file macros, and we have folder change on folder change. Okay? And that means if we make some change to D9 through O1000, and remember, very important, B2 is false. That means nothing else is going on. We're not sorting it, we're not filtering it, and we're not loading it. Okay, we're not doing anything with those folders. As long as nothing else is going on with it, then continue on. One more consideration: if we have to make sure that the icon before is a folder, right? We want to make sure that we're not that if we make a change, let's go ahead and pull that out. If I make a change here, I want to make sure that whatever is before must be a folder, an open or a closed folder, but the icon before needs to be an open or closed folder in order for us to do anything else. So we're going to run that check here. If the target offset, the row is the same row, no offset. The column is the column before, right? If the target offset, we should probably put value in here. Sometimes I forget that. Value is, it still works without value though, but I like proper. If that value is either, right, the open folder, or the value is closed folder, if it's either two, then we can continue on with the name change, right? If we make any change, then continue. Okay, then what we need to do is we need the old folder name and the new folder name. We need to run those as strings. And then we're going to also set, of course, our object, file system object here is a scripting object, just as we do when we're working with those folders. And we know that we always put the B B is the folder, right? So we know that within B and the target row is our long file name. B is here, right here. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. B is always our corresponding long file name here. B is always there. So we always put that there. That was the training in last week. So it's always going to go there. So we know that, and based on that value we can get the folder, and then we can set the folder. So we're going to get that folder, right? We need that folder. And then the old folder name, right, is going to be based on B and the target. So B in the target. So we need the whole file name, right? We need the whole file name, and we need the folder itself. So we need to know the folder. And now the new folder name, we're going to run the new folder name, right? The new folder name is going to be the object of the parent folder, whatever the parent is, plus the backslash and the target value. So we've got the folder, we've defined the folder here. And we defined whatever the parent folder. In this case, right? In this case, we don't know, we need to know the parent folder so we can build that. So we can build that whole link. So in this case, the parent folder would be 220 junk. Here's the parent folder, right? So here's the parent folder, right? Here's the backslash. And then whatever else we type in is going to be the new name. Whatever else we type in different is going to be the new name. So we need to build that entire text so that we can rename it. So we build it here. The new folder name is built. The parent folder plus the backslash plus whatever we type in, that is going to be the new folder name. Now all we need is one line of code. We just name, it's called name, old folder name as the new folder name. That's it. And of course we want to update B with the new folder name. That new folder name, we need to update that entire path. And then this is just something that we use when we use send keys, sometimes the number lock. So I use this to reset. In other words, we're going to be using send keys when we rename the folder. And so I will show you what that does when we add the new folder. When we add a new folder, we also rename it. And when we use send keys for that. But when we use send keys, often for some reason in Windows, the number lock is disabled. And you'll remember that if you saw the PDF interview, when we use send keys, for some reason, I don't know why, it's a bug, but number lock gets enabled. So this just re-enables number lock. Okay, don't know why, but this takes care of the issue. So we've got that covered. And so that's how we rename it. So we can just go ahead and simply change the name, and then the code works really, really great just by changing it. We can change it back to images, just clicking here and going back to images and just images, and then it automatically changes based on here. So now it's changed. All right, now we have the ability to add a new folder, which is a great feature. And what I want to do is basically, let's go ahead and delete these. We don't need these extra folders in here. Let's go ahead and delete them here. And what I want to do is I want the ability to add a new folder in here. And when the user clicks on that new folder, when they click on the new folder icon, I want them to automatically take the user to that new folder so that they can quickly change the name of that new folder, because we're going to default it to the name new folder, but there's a good chance they don't want to keep it that. So when they click the new folder, I want it to go to that, and then I want it to highlight the name so they can just change it to newest folder, right? And have those changes automatically changed of course in there. And so what I want to do is I want to make sure, not only do I want to get inside, I want to make sure all of the text is highlighted just like that. So all they need to do is retype it. Let's watch that again. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and delete the folder here in the file manager. I think we're going to add the ability to delete folder in the future, but I want to make sure that we get everything added first before we go ahead. Let's go ahead and refresh that. And once again, what I want to do is I want to be able to click new folder and for it to highlight it just like that. And then we can change the name just like that. So it's so simple for the user, and that's what I want to do. So let's go ahead and go into the code and see just how we did that. Okay, into the VBA we do have a macro called new folder, and let's go ahead and take a look at that. We have under the folder macros, all the way at the bottom we have something called create new folder. And so this is the macro that's been assigned to that new folder button. We're going to dimension a few things, including the parent folder as a string. We're going to need that so we know where to place that new folder. We've dimensioned some folder ranges and the find parent range. We need to locate where the parent is. And some other items that are long. So basically we're going to set B2 as false because we're working with the structure here. Again, we're creating the scripting object. And then we're going to set the folder range, right? We're going to set the folder range to B8 and B of all this. So basically what I need to do is I need to find the parent, right? Because if this is the parent, right, images, but we need to know where the parent is exactly. We want to make sure that we find it in the range so we know where the parent is. So if we're creating a new folder in images, it may or may not be the one that we've clicked on. So we need to find that. So we make sure we're going to take this range and we're going to locate in all this range. We're going to locate. We're going to find that. I want to find the row of where the parent is. So that's why we need to find the range. And all of those paths are contained in column B, which is where we're going to be looking. B, so we're going to set it, and we're going to use the last row so we can define that folder range here. And then the parent folder, we know the parent folder is in B5, but what we want to do is I want to find that folder. So here's the parent folder in B5. We're going to set that up because that's always the folder that we're on. And then what we want to do is we want to basically create a new folder simply by going here. And then we're going to set the object folder, creating a file system. We're going to set the parent folder plus backslash. And remember, this is our default name for the new folder. This creates it, but now I need to know where to place it, right? I want to place it. Here's what I want to do. If I'm on images, right? If the images is open, right? Let's open it up so we know. I want to put, what I want to do is I want to take all this, I want to bring it down, I want to move it down, I want to move it down one row, and I want to place the new one right here. So I want to bring everything down. I want to place the new one right here. So that's really important. So what we're going to do that is we are going to find the parent row, make sure that it's in the row that we're in, because it depends. If we've selected here or another folder, we want to make sure that we've defined the parent. We want to put it right in between here because we don't know where the user has selected, right? The user could be here. It's not necessarily the selected row. They could be here, right? We can't use the selected row because if they click here, so we need to know based on this here, what is the parent and where is that located? Where is that located? And then wherever it's located, drop it down and put it right in the middle. So that's why we have to find the parent row. We're going to use find. We have our folder range, which is everything we've defined here. And we're going to find the parent folder in that range. We're going to find it in that range. And we're going to set the range, right? Now we're going to set the range to D. Oh, we need the last row. Right? I need to know the last row. Once we have it, the last row, like for example, the last row is not necessarily in E, right? It's not necessarily in column D because look, in this case, if we have open folders, it could be in column E, or it could be in, right, column F, right? So basically we need to take this entire range and then find the last row, and that's what this does here. This here, found the last, based on what? Based on the range. This range here is D9 through 0999. So this last row is, regardless of the column, it's going to find the last row. And now what we need to do is we set the last row to the last row is found the last row. So once we found the range, once we found this folder, I need to know what the first row is, because we got to move everything down, right? So I need to know the first row and the last row. So we've got that. So, and then if it's not found, now let's just take a look. Let's go home, right? Now let's say we create a new folder right here, right in Documents. If we create a new folder, I need to go all the way to the end, right? I need to go to the bottom. There's nothing to increase. I just need to go drop to the bottom. So we need to put an if. So we need to put an if that says if it's not found, if the parent's not found, right, then oh, excuse me, this would be if it's found. If the not find is nothing, this means there is a parent row. Otherwise, if it's not, then the folding row is the last row. That means it would be the last row here because there's no parent row in here. Okay? That just means that we're on the highest level. There are no subfolders. So we've just differentiated between those two types. Now we can place our values, right? So now what we want to do is, if it's not the current row, remember I want to copy this and I want to basically bring it down a row. I want to copy it down a row. And that's how we do with this line of code. We copy it, copy this all the way to the last row, and we paste the values. And we do the same thing for B. We do the same thing for B, right? Actually, we can do A, because A is going to be helpful too. A is that true or false, so we want to copy that down over too, right? Not just because we now have added true or false for A, so we should go through A and B. So A and B is going to help us because A, it covers whether the subfolder contains subfolders or not, true or false. So that is important as well. So we want to cover that. And now we just application cut copy mode is false, so we're finished with the cut copy. And now we're going to set the folder load to false. Okay, we can cover that. And now what we want to do is we want to set the B, the parent folder, to the new folder. We want to set B. So that means when let's go ahead and expand here. When we create a new folder, right? I want to set it, in B, I want to set that new folder right here. So if we're on images and we create a new folder, right? Let's just keep it a new folder, okay? And we'll keep it a new folder. I want also this to say new folder, right? We have to make sure that this path is correct too. So not only this, but the path has to be correct. So B here, where were we here? B is the parent folder plus the new folder, right? And then we set A as false because no, the folder does not contain, right? A new folder wouldn't contain any subfolder, so we can set that to false automatically. And then what we need to do is I need to determine the last column, right? I need to know where to place the text, right? Because example, if we're in here, if we're in new folder, right? If we've clicked new folder, I need to know that needs to go right down under new folder, right here, right? Test. So we need to know where to place it. You see, we just place it inside that folder. We need to know how far. So what we can do is we can take this range, right? Actually what we do is we take this range, right? We find out what column is the last text, and that's how we know where to place the next one. Because we know where this one is, so we know it needs to go to 1 over. So that's why we have to define the column. I know I'm moving quick, but it's a long training. There's a lot to cover. So we've said basically it's the folder row plus 1. That means the one below, right? And we've defined that. So now we know where the column is. We know what column to place it in, right? We need to know because it's not necessarily this column. We need to know what column to place. So we're saying basically if column number equals 5 and column, basically we don't want it to go anything under 4. So basically this is column 4, this is column 5. So the earliest column for text, right, would be here. The first column for an icon would be 4. The first column for text would be 5. So that's where the first column would be. Nothing earlier than that for the text. So let's move it along. We go on, we place the folder icon here, the closed folder icon in the folder row plus 1. So it's going to be, remember, it's going to be 1 down, right? If we just created the new folder, and we need to know 1 down. So here's the new folder and then the text. So the icon, and then after that, right? The column number, the normal column number, not -1, the column number would be new folder because that's the first default text. Now what I want to do is I also want to set B5, which we've done already just to check. And now what we're going to do is we're going to select that actual cell. Remember, we're going to select it, right? I want to select it. And then what I want to do is, look, selecting is not enough, right? I want to select it and I want to highlight it, right? I want to select it and I want to highlight it, right? I want to do those two things. So selecting it is not going to highlight it. How can we highlight it? Well, we can highlight it by clicking backspace, right? And then Control Z. Okay, you see how we did that? Once again, backspace, Control Z. That's what I want. And that's because I want to highlight them, so I want to bring the user's attention to that field. And I want to highlight it, so all they need to do is change it, just like that, and it changes. So that's what I want to do. Again, backspace, Control Z. So we're going to use send keys. We're going to wait a little bit. Just wait a little second. We're going to send the keys backspace, send keys, Control Z. That in itself highlights it. And remember, this is the code that caused our number lock to reset, so that's why we resetted it. Okay, that's why it was reset. So that is how we do that. Again, so we just click on here, click on images, right? We have a new folder already, so we don't want to do that. Let's go ahead and rename that. And then clicking on images again, clicking on new folder, highlights it automatically, and we can change it to new folder without the space. Okay, so that's exactly how we do it, and that's how the code works. So it's really amazing training. Let me check my list to make sure I've gone over everything. I know it's been a long time, but I think we've gone over everything in this training. We've gone over, let's go ahead and go for review. All right, so we can see everything that was done in this training here. For this part 2, we've gone over how to change folder names, we've gone over how to change file names, we've gone over how to create new folders, we've gone over sorting as well as filtering, we've done hide options, showing options, as well as the ability to select multiple options in the cell. And we've also gone over how to create drives, as well as to put the percentages and the conditional formatting used on them. We've also gone over today how to differentiate between those folders that contain subfolders and those folders that do not contain subfolders. So it's been an amazing, very long, but extremely great training. I'm so happy. I'm looking forward to part 3, but please put your suggestions. What should I add? What is great? What do you like? I would love your comments, your feedbacks, your likes, and most importantly, your shares. So thank you very much for this extended training. Have a great day.